Is it going live? I didn't click it soon enough. There we go. This episode of the Off-Road Podcast is sponsored by Warren, Colby Valve, and 4 Patriots.
Off-Road Podcast 421, Centerforce Clutches.
Tonight, Aaron gets a pass, Coy parks by an airplane, and Ben is not the best man.
Welcome to the Off-Road Podcast, a podcast about everything off-road. We cover the news, review products, and interview people in the off-road industry. Your hosts tonight are Aaron. My name is Coy, and our guest tonight is Trent McGee from Centerforce Clutches. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
What do you had going on this weekend, Aaron? Tell us about it.
Let's see here. I'm sorry, I just noticed it says that we're having trouble streaming to our Facebook group. So most of the people don't watch through that group, but if you are trying, I don't know what to tell you. I do know what to tell you. Go over to our Facebook page. Sorry, our YouTube page, Off-Road Podcast, and you can watch us there. Let's see. I didn't really do anything off-roadable this past week. I moved the Nissan a couple times around the property. I got the muffler in that I need to replace, that I smashed all up on the McGrew Trail a couple weeks ago. Besides that, I had a day off on Friday, so I called in an electrical inspection, and I passed my roughing inspection for the shop. So now I can start covering the walls with plywood after I put insulation in the walls. We'll get there. It's going to take a little bit of money to do that, but that's the next step. Covering the walls so I can do the finish on the electrical, and then I can have power in the shop.
I feel your pain. I went through that about 5 years ago myself.
Yeah. And it is so expensive. Like when I looked at OSB a couple weeks ago, because that's what I was going to use on the walls, it seems like a couple weeks ago it was $12 a sheet, which is at the bottom of the market. And yesterday it's $22 a sheet. So I'm like, well, I guess we're going to just wait and see if it comes down again, because I just can't spend that much. I need like 36 sheets of plywood to cover the wall. So actually probably 40. I forgot about the garage door end when I was counting the other day. So yeah, it's going to cost a bunch, and I don't want to spend double what I really need to. So I'll just wait. Time will tell. Maybe I'll find it cheap on Craigslist or something too. But that's about it. How about you, Coy? Have you done anything off-road, overland?
No, I did something that was technically overland. I was wanting to go to Mogfest with you this weekend, and then my wife completely dominated the weekend with completely dominated the weekend with family and kid stuff. Just ruined my whole weekend.
Ruined it.
Yeah,
man, women are
just, not doing
just
family
worst.
Stuff.
Families.
Children's birthday parties, local festivals, concerts.
Yeah.
But last morning I had just a couple. What's that?
Last week you were saying that you were going to be going to the Corn Festival. So I got to know, how was the Corn Festival?
There was corn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
They like actually will give you. Yeah. Oh yeah. They cook it up and butter it, wrap it in tinfoil, and they'll just give it to you. Big festival.
Was it cream corn?
No, just regular corn.
No. Canned corn, like popcorn. No. How many types of corn you could get there?
Just one kind of corn. Just one.
Okay. All right.
My wife acts like they're giving it away for free, so she acts like it's gold bars. She gets in line 3 times, sticks 10 of them in her purse. I got corn just wrapped up in my fridge, so She really pulled one over on them.
Yeah.
But I had a few hours Sunday morning that I was able to sneak off by myself, and a buddy of mine has an airplane in the airport he stores it at. There was a amateur, what's called a STOL competition, short takeoff or landing. That's what that stands for. So I just think like bush planes and stuff. They literally set some cones up on the runway. They paint a line across it, and then they have cones set up at different footage markers. They pull up to the line, and second they come off the ground, that's how they mark that distance, and then they fly one lap around, and then they land. They have to land at that line or after it. If they land any touch wheels before that, it disqualifies that run. They land after that line and then throw the brakes on. They measure that, and it's a competition. And I mean, I didn't expect this. I've seen a few videos of like Alaska doing like these bush plane things where they're doing that, but like it's a full competition. There's guys that are like, it's almost like how somebody builds a dragster to go race. They build planes just for this.
Wow.
These things seem like they can barely fly other than land. Like they can hold altitude, just these weird noises, ripping around. Then they put it on a trailer, pop the wings off, to the next one. But they had a gyrocopter. They have 10 different classes, you know. They had a gyrocopter one. Turns out those things can land. I think that one had the shortest landing. It landed in a 33-foot section. Which was
that's
insane.
Yeah, that thing looks like it's 18 feet long or something like that. So it landed in the distance of 2 of its selves.
Yeah, and then there was a bunch of other planes there. That was one of the like national competitor ones. I think that one there, Big Tunas, was called. I'm pretty sure that one won. He's got her all done up, but I mean these things just weigh nothing. And when they come to a stop, I mean, you've locked up a car with anti-lock brakes before, right?
Uh-huh.
They do that with the plane. There's smoke rolling off all 3 tires. They're just howling. And it's hilarious. The tail dragger ones, they can't brake near that hard or they'll just dump their prop into the ground. But they'll be braking.
Oh, sure.
And the nose is at like a 22-degree angle to the ground. They look like they're going to do an endo.
Wow.
And then right at the last second, they let off.
They need like a front wheelie bar so they can't.
Well, if you look at this picture, they have like massive shocks and stuff on these ones. That one's they have like Baja suspension on them so that they can just stall them and drop them right onto the runway. Some of them hit pretty hard.
Wow.
I don't have a picture of it, but there was one in the that's one of my cars, and my buddy's playing at his hangar. I just thought it was a cool picture.
I gotta say, Coy, I don't know what Nokia phone you took these pictures with, but the quality is terrible.
Yeah, that's just getting them onto your guys' page.
I figured as much. I figured
could never get them transferred on here.
Man.
Mark Dibble says
bad for everybody who's watching.
Mark Dibble says some have a variable pitch propeller to reverse thrust. There was one there that did have that, but I guess the guy had just put it on and he hadn't used it enough yet that he didn't want to use it in competition, so he didn't, go full reverse on the thrusters. There was also one you would have liked, Aaron, this guy, and this plane seemed almost unflyable other than just 30 miles an hour. It was some kind of Cessna with some giant turbocharged engine, and then generally the prop is just, right in off the crank. It had a gear reduction on the prop.
Oh, nice. So like portals.
Yeah, it was basically like portal axles for your prop. It sounded insane, and then it looked like it was going to fall from the sky when he came around. Like it was doing like 40 miles an hour, and it was just full RPM, just barely moving.
Was it like whining really loud from the gearbox?
All of it, like super loud.
Or?
I don't know if it was the turbo or the gearbox, but it also, like, he just had to run that. Usually the planes, once they take off, they kind of idle back and, they sound like a plane. He had to keep that thing like just pegged.
Oh, just to keep it aloft?
That's what it seemed like. I don't know. I'm not a pilot.
Yeah. It's Tim being nice to you for once there, Coy. He says that
made me feel like warm socks fresh out of the dryer, too. That might be the first thing he's nice to me this year.
Yeah.
Oh, it was super cool. And the other nice thing about it went from like 10 o'clock to 1. Like, it was super awesome. Little bite-sized competition, and they were done. So
short and sweet.
I'm going to go next year for sure.
Okay. Well, make sure you invite me.
Probably not, but yeah.
Okay. Well, there's that too.
Well,
I won't. I might have a plane to bring.
Oh, well, I could invite you because the public's allowed to come, but they have to park with the peasants like 2 miles away and get ferried in. My buddy's hangar only has so much room to park, so I got to drive past all the peasants walking
Who's
And,
who's winning though? That's 4 mile. That's 4 miles worth of gas in someone else's car that I didn't have to.
true,
Whatever.
true.
It's just like corn in my purse, Coy. Corn in my purse.
Short in my first.
Trent,
What
have you
about-
done anything? Have you done anything off road related in the past week or two?
Not in the past week or two. I did my final pre-run for Ultimate Adventure, which I'm sure we'll get to, and basically what that involves, depending on where it is in the country, me flying in, renting a Wrangler, and violating the rental agreement a dozen different ways. So
I love it. I
Uh,
love it.
I am a walking, talking reason why you never, ever, ever buy a used rental car.
All right.
I actually just heard a rental car phrase just this weekend. Somebody said nothing handles better than a rental car, and I was like, I'm gonna never stop saying that.
You're darn right. But hey, you guys know
Yeah.
what the best off-road vehicle in the world is?
It's a
What's
rental
that?
car. It's also
It's a rental car. You can
It's
get a
also the
rental car
fastest.
down anything. Down.
yes,
Anything.
yes. I saw a picture today that someone used one of those big U-Haul trucks and they were launching a boat with it, and somehow it got away from them, and the U-Haul truck is floating out in this lake because something happened. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I've done bad things to rental cars over the years. Yeah.
Have you-
not just Jeeps, but yeah.
Have you had to
We won't
get
get
it
into
towed in before?
No, I haven't had to do that. I may or may not have had to buy a tire or two, but no. And there's always, I've never done it, but I've always when I get a rental Wrangler, especially if I'm pre-running, is I will I hope for the Sahara, because the Sahara has the side steps on it, and you'd think, okay, well, that why? Well, because that's just something to get damaged. Well, what's nice is that when you hit the side step, it's kind of like a warning, and if you damage said side step, all you got to do is unbolt them and just leave them behind the dumpster at the hotel. And
They'll never know.
They'll
never know. I've got a story like that. Back when I lived in Washington, there's an off-road park up there called Tahuya, and I had a buddy in the Navy, and he was stationed in Japan, and he was coming back to the U.S. And I said, hey, why don't you rent a 4x4 while you're here instead of just a regular rig? Rent a 4x4 because I'm going wheeling at this off-road park. And so he got a 4x4. Unfortunately, it was a Ram 1500 quad cab. And we went out to Tahuya, and it did pretty good. He rubbed the side of a door handle on a tree, but luckily it just barely kissed it, and it was chrome, so it didn't rub any paint off. And then there's this lower valance underneath the bumper that it messed up, and that got yanked off, and they're none the wiser, and it went back just fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I don't.
Right.
Are they none the wiser, or is it just like your CEO wife is cheating on you? And you're just kind of like, yeah, no, it's fine. I don't know what's happening. Like, I think they just pretend.
In my case, it's I usually try and return cars to big airports because it's there's a lot more volume and stuff like that, and so they're just doing a quick walk around the car and go. I mean, I think I did the worst damage to this last one or whatever. I was coming down a trail, and it was like a down section, and there was like an old, like, crushed up culvert. Like, it was originally a culvert to divert water underneath the road, but it was all destroyed and it was all gnarly, and it actually grabbed the bumper and peeled like a carrot peeler. It peeled like a bunch of plastic off of one corner of the bumper. And so I went to the hotel that night, and there was some dude that had a service truck that was staying at the hotel. And I was like, hey man, is there any chance you got like a good utility knife in there? And he's like, yeah, man. And I was like, here's what I got. I just cut off the little carrot peelings and turned it in. They didn't say a word.
Perfect.
Oh, I love
when you were talking about the side steps on the Saharas, I was thinking that people are probably selling those all over Facebook Marketplace for $50 or whatever. So I was thinking, oh yeah, he's just going to get a new pair or something. But no, you just take them off and they're
you just
really
throw them behind the dumpster at the hotel, and then I've never had to do it, but it's always been my plan B, is if I really tear up, a front or rear bumper or something like that, like stove in the plastic or whatever, just start calling around to the local off-road shops looking for takeoffs.
Yeah, I'm sure they have them.
Tell them you'll trade them a set of side steps for a bumper.
You're speaking my language.
I always wanted to rent a car when I was young, but you can't rent them until you're 21 generally, because one of our buddies had a dry nitrous kit, which technically you only have to drill one like 15 millimeter hole past the air filter, and we're like, put it on the bottom of the intake, put a piece of black tape over it. When you're done, no one's gonna know. But we never ended up doing that, because by the time we turned 21, we were more mature. But I still think about it sometimes.
I could get into stories. There's many
you could rent U-Hauls when you're 18.
But nitrous on a U-Haul? Oh, that would be
U-Haul.
One of the other things that's fun is you take a front-wheel drive car, like a Focus or any front-wheel drive car, and you put it on the RTI ramp backwards. You can run the front tires all the way to the base of the RTI ramp, and the back tire is
it's just
3.5 feet off the ground. Yeah, that's fun.
All right.
I'm not condoning any of this behavior.
No,
we used to get out the McDonald's.
The McDonald's trays.
Yeah.
Yank the e-brake. Oh yeah, no, that's good fun.
If you ever want to try that again, go get yourself from like the 10-pound weights for dumbbells or the 25-pound ones. And do the exact same thing. Yeah, it's the exact same thing, but with sparks, and it's awesome.
That is a good tip. I will keep that in mind. I've grown older and wiser since that's happened, but yes, there have been many hijinks. I've also played the game of how far can we take apart the interior of a rental car while driving down the road with no tools. That's a good one too.
Wow.
Goodness.
You can get surprisingly far.
So how did the airbag deploy while you were driving?
Again, I'm a walking, talking reason why you never, ever, ever buy a used rental car.
We can do an episode on that, it sounds like. All right. Well, this week in review is brought to you by 4 Patriots. Have you ever been concerned with the shelf life of the food that you take camping? Since you're listening to the podcast, we know that you have at least some emergency food stashed in your rig. 4 Patriot sells a variety of survival food and equipment that pair great with the off-road and adventure lifestyle that you're used to. If you use code FRN, you get 10% off of your first order. We also want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Patch. Head over to patriotpatch.co and check out their selection of great patches, shirts, cleaning mats, signs, and stickers. You can also join the Patch of the Month Club for $15 and receive a patch, matching sticker, and artist proof each month.
Our patches, let's not forget about those guys. $13 shipped in the US for one, $10 for any additional, or $10 if you are local or see us at an event. Get them out from us in person, $10 each. Just send us a message through any of our channels. We'll set you up with a PayPal link.
Have tire troubles ever left you deflated? Colby Valve has got you covered. Ever have a valve stem leak? Colby Valve makes reusable and easily replaceable valve stems that don't require you to remove your tire from the wheel. They work with your off-road rig, ATV, side-by-side, commuter vehicle, or even your tractor. Never be left stranded again because of a busted valve stem. They also have a tire repair kit for those punctures that keep you away from doing your favorite thing, wheeling. Make sure to check out colbyvalve.com or ask for them at your local off-road products store.
All right, our first news article tonight is from The Drive, and we titled it Diesel Gladiator is Dead. So if you haven't heard, Jeep's canceling the diesel option in their Gladiator. You can't get that 3-liter eco diesel anymore after the last run, which is the far out run, You call it a model or a trim edition, the Far Out edition. So, and they only put in the Gladiator for 3 years. I know the Gladiator has only been around for 5 years, I believe. I think 2018.
2020, I think.
Was the Gladiator 2020? Oh, I'm thinking of the JL. I think I'm thinking of the JL started in 2018 and the Gladiator was a couple years later. So, but Jeep cites that the reason is that, that they're sorry. I heard a strange noise outside my podcast studio. They said that they are swinging heavily towards electrification with all their new models, and so they're just going to be focusing on that. And Stellantis, their parent company, phased the EcoDiesel out of the Ram brand, the 3-liter EcoDiesel out of the Ram brand back last year. So if you want to get a brand new one, this is your final chance to get one, and it's the Far Out edition. So go check that out. I'm sure it won't be cheap. You guys
ever driven one of those? Either the Gladiator or the 1500?
Mm-mm.
They're great. That's a fantastic motor. I have a friend of mine that has a 3-liter EcoDiesel Gladiator and actually traded in his Tacoma. He had a brand new Tacoma, hated it, got terrible mileage. He tows like a small camper. It's like I want to say it's even like a single axle. It's a big single axle, but it's a single axle camper. And the Tacoma was struggling and doing a terrible job and getting terrible mileage. And he traded in for a Gladiator. Absolutely loves that car. And I think he's going to keep it for a long time. I mean, that's a shame. So that was a good offering.
Yeah. I gotta check. I should have done some research before the show, but I think that Chevy dropped. No, actually, no. We know that Chevy dropped the small diesel model with the Colorado when they just came out with this latest generation.
Another fantastic. That little 2.8 Duramax was a bad Mama Jamma for sure.
Yep.
I drove like a 2006 diesel Jeep Liberty a couple times.
Not same.
Supposedly they have terrible reliability, but it was actually a sweet little rig.
Yeah, they're not bad, but not same. Not same.
No, it's not the same. It is an EcoDiesel, technically, though. Did you finish all that, Aaron?
That's it. It's your turn.
I have a little. I wasn't following along. Didn't know if you mentioned. You notice the Far Out name edition? That's kind of like a weird one, right?
Yes,
it's an odd one. So, my dad is of a certain age when Far Out was like used, and it was cool to say. But I didn't know this. But also back then, like when you're in high school, if you swore, you would get in real trouble. Unlike today. So there's another set of words that starts with an F and ends with an O that you would tell someone to do when they're annoying you. That you would interchange. You just be like, "Far out, man! Get out of here." And it was like you could just kind of Toad would inflect that. I kind of wonder if somebody at Jeep is of that age and use that. And there's Far Out.
I've never heard that. I've never heard that.
Here. Knowing some of those guys, it wouldn't surprise me.
It bumped me like a Far Out edition. That seems off. And they're ending the diesel. I'm sure there's some Jeep engineers, people that are disappointed. I don't know.
I'm sure.
So this article comes from TechCrunch, and Fiskars, the electric car maker, is revealing the all-electric Alaska pickup truck. This is a bit of a read, so bear with me. Fiskars, the automotive startup turned publicly traded company founded by famed automotive.
I got to interrupt you real quick. It's just Fisker. It's not plural, so it's not the scissor company.
It's not the scissors.
You're totally right. I just added that S. Fisker.
Yeah.
The automotive startup turned publicly traded company founded by famed automotive designer Henriks Fisker. Revealed Thursday a dizzying array of EV prototype, a beefy pickup truck with an expandable bed, and a Grand Tourer sports car with up to 600 miles of range, to a souped-up off-road version of its Ocean SUV and the mysterious pair vehicle that it plans to build with Foxconn. CEO Henrik Fisker has called the Alaska pickup the Ferrari of pickups, targeting other successful all-electric luxury pickups in the space, including Rivian's highly popular Rivian R1T, the still vaporware Tesla Cybertruck, and the Ford F-150 Lightning. Alaska is built on a similar platform as the Ocean, but it's stretched slightly. Fisker calls the platform under the Alaska the FT31. The company says the EV pickup will be built by automotive contract manufacturer Manga Steyr. Manga? Am I saying that right, Aaron?
I think it's Magna.
Magna Steyr in Europe at the same plants as the Ocean. Is that Steyr like that builds the military vehicles and guns? I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's the same company.
Yeah.
Interesting. Fisker said Thursday that the Alaska will get up to 340 miles of all-electric range, along with some unique features, including a big gulp cup holder. That's
wow.
Ad.
Go America.
Like, wow. It's got a dig. And water bottle. An extendable bed that goes from 4.5 feet to 7.5 feet with the push of a button, and various cubbies and storage bins, including one for a cowboy hat. Like, are they actually, like, are they making fun of us? Like, I kind of
I'm not sure.
Cubby for a cowboy hat and the big gulp. I don't know. I'm not sure how to feel. The extendable bed has an interesting feature that might be attractive to campers. The back window of the cab and the rear wall can be dropped, allowing the cabin to open up to the truck bed, lengthening the entire area when the tailgate is down to 9 feet 6 inches. This feature, which Fisker calls the Houdini trunk, would offer a sort of sleeping platform for owners and could be used to carry longer items. Fisker said that Alaska will come to the market in 2024 and have a starting price of $45,400 before incentives. With incentive, Fisker says that the Alaska will cost $37,900. Reservations for the Fisker Alaska open this evening, with deliveries taking place sometime in 2025.
So basically, they grabbed an Avalanche and ripped it off. In terms of it.
Yeah, I do like when they say extendable bed. Like, I need it to be like if it's an extendable bed, I need it to make the transformer noise and extend, like not the back of the cab fold down.
Yeah. Yeah. When they say that it extends, a lot of things do that.
I mean, remember what was it? The Ford Explorer 4-Tracks that had the extendable bed where you'd fold the tailgate down and that little metal hoop would fold.
Yeah,
that was an extendable bed, so I guess it's an upgrade from that gimmick. But
was the Sport Track? Was that the Bronco 3? We had the Bronco 2. Is that the Bronco 3? And now the Bronco Sport is the Bronco 4.
We could do that. I'm open to it.
I mean, I like where your head's at.
Yeah. All right. Well, I threw this article in here because being a car guy, it's cool to see that Fisker's getting back in the game. They built an all electric car that I thought was really sweet back in the day, but apparently it had a lot of teething issues and caught on fire sitting at ports when it got rained on really hard, or I think maybe a hurricane came through and splashed it with water. So they had some issues, but they were really cool. And then I think it's Bob Lutz from GM, former GM, bought a bunch of them and LS swapped them, which is super awesome. But anywho's, I think it's the more we have, the more competition there is. Competition's good. It makes things better. These boutique ones like Fisker, it makes me wonder how many will we really see? Can they make enough? Are they going to be too expensive for normal people? I don't know. But I like innovation, and I feel like you'll get some of that with companies like Fisker. Unfortunately, it looks to me like it's a unibody truck. So it's a Honda Ridgeline, it's a Ford Maverick, Hyundai Santa Fe.
To me, it's just when battery technology reaches a certain point that I can just buy a battery that's, the size of a spare tire, fits in the spare tire well. I need lots of electric motors available for me to take out of junkyards. So I'm happy to see this, as it's like a buffalo, and I'm a hungry Indian, and I'm just waiting for those parts to come to a junkyard.
Yeah. So, anywho's, that's all I got to say on that.
Go prepared with Warren Industries. They produced the first recreational winch in 1959 and lead the industry with their dedication to quality and reliability. When you dig yourself in deep, make sure you have the right tools to get yourself out. Get Warren equipped and go where others can't. Now, let's get ready for adventure and head into our main topic.
All right. Well, tonight we're joined by a well-known member of the off-road community, Trent McGee. So Trent has been a freelance magazine writer and the editor of both 4x4 Power and Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road magazines. He's was the host of the TV show Super Lifts, Off-Road Adventures on the Outdoor Channel, author of 2 books. They look like very technical books. And been a part of the Ultimate Adventure for at least the past 6 years. And the main reason why he's on the show tonight is he is the marketing manager for Centerforce Clutches. So I thought it'd be fun to bring a clutch company on. We've never really talked like automatics versus manuals on this show. All 3 of us hosts, Ben isn't here tonight, but all 3 of us hosts drive automatics. Ben had... His last rig was a stick shift Cherokee, an XJ. It wasn't much. I mean, it was beat up really bad. So I don't know how much he did get to drive it as a stick shift. But beyond that, I don't feel like we have a lot of off-road experience with stick shifts. I know both Coy and I have a lot of on-road experience with stick shifts. Both of us were in the it feels like this has come up a lot lately, but both of us were in the sport compact car scene back in the day. And so that was a big deal for us to make sure you had a manual. Otherwise, you were a loser. So I don't know if it's looked that way upon in the off-road world, though. So I'm hoping to find out tonight.
Yeah, right. I'm hoping that I'm not part of the pathetic automatic scum crowd, but we'll see. I before we jump into the Fast 5 facts here, Trent. So I grew up without a TV, so magazines were a big deal for me as a youngster. Peterson Off-Road, did they? The names kind of. I'm skipping on it right now. They used to do once a year, I think it was Peterson's anyways, where they'd get like a bunch of readers builds together and put them through this insane challenge. Was that Peterson that did that?
It was Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road, and I believe what you're referring to is Ultimate Adventure.
So it is the same as what it is now? The Ultimate Adventure that you guys do now?
Yeah, well, okay, so there was it depends. There were a couple of different events. Four-Wheeler back in the day used to do Top Truck Challenge.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
And Top Truck was, it was, but that was a full-on competition.
It was like military grade version of Ultimate Adventure, basically. Kind of.
Not really. I mean, it was very controlled. So it was at an actual competition, and so there were stages you had to complete. You know, there were points awarded and all that stuff.
Yeah.
UA is quite a bit different. But Four-Wheeler and Four-Wheel and Off-Road, while at one time were 2 different competing entities, at some point about 15 years ago, were one company purchased the other, and they all came under the same umbrella. So, but Four-Wheeler and Four-Wheel and Off-Road were in print for about the same amount of time.
Yeah.
So,
I was
into the 70s.
Yeah, that Top Truck Challenge. I remember as a kid, like I just waited for that one. I loved that because it was just carnage and logs under water and just guys neck deep in mud. Like it just, when you're young, that just seems like the coolest thing ever. Now I look at somebody neck deep in mud. I'm like, oh no, thank you.
Yeah, Top Truck was legit, especially back in the day. And that was I mean, if you competed in Top Truck, or if you even got to Top Truck, that was a big deal. So yeah, for sure.
But anyways, I used to read all those magazines. Of course, the one thing I pointed out wasn't Peterson's apparently, but yeah.
Well, four-wheel off-road was
Yeah.
I mean, there was a bunch of them back in the day.
But yeah, those magazines they got me through a lot. All right, we're gonna do the fast 5 facts. I'm just gonna spit out some questions at you. You just throw an answer out. Do your best just to choose one instead of multiple.
Right.
New or old vehicle?
Old.
Summer or winter camping?
That's a tough one, and I'll explain why. I live in Arizona, and so there's a difference. There's a distinct difference. So summer camping means just going up into the mountains. Winter camping means desert camping down in the desert, and so I'll take either one.
Okay. It's funny you say that. Last week we just got that from somebody
Exact,
South
almost
California.
verbatim.
Yeah, they're like winter camping, so we can go to the desert, and all us in the Northwest are like, I'm sorry, what?
Exactly. Yeah.
Rock, sand, snow, or mud?
Rocks.
Favorite vehicle brand?
Gotta be Jeep.
Gotta be Jeep.
I love a lot of different vehicles. I've owned a bunch of different vehicles, but 4 out of my current stable of 9 vehicles are Jeeps.
Wow. Favorite tire?
I can't answer that. I would say, like, all time, if you were to twist my arm behind my back, I would say the BF Goodrich Crawler. Best rock crawling tire ever. But yes, they have the manuals. Thanks, buddy. But yeah, there's a lot of really, really, really good tires out there nowadays. And so I couldn't pick just one, but if I had to, it would be the Crawler.
All right.
I got to say real quick, Coy, before you get to that last one, I got to say you have to have 4 Jeeps. That way you at least have one that works well.
No, it's one for every occasion, guys. There's a difference. So
yeah, one for when your transmission explodes, one for when your axle.
That's not it at all. You have your 48, in my case, you have your 47 CJ2A when you want to go flat fendering. You have your 97 rock crawling buggy when you want to go hardcore crawling. You have I have a CJ7 on 33s. That's kind of like my weenie wheeler. And then I have another flat fender. So, but yeah,
all right.
So
okay,
it's
all right.
Different stages.
Tried to get that jab in.
Yeah, you take it where you can get it.
Hey, and 3 out of 4 of them run right now.
That's good. That's good in Jeep. Yeah, that's good in Jeep years. Any recommendation for someone new to off-roading? Just like one quick piece of advice. Get
out there. There are a lot of guys. There are way too many people that read way too many forums or listen to way too many podcasts that think they need the biggest, baddest stuff out there before they can even venture off-road. The fact of the matter is, all you need is 4-wheel drive, and just go out there, do it, get stuck, break it, fix it, figure out what's important to you and what your type of wheeling is. But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to learn any of that stuff until you actually get out there.
Yep. All right. Why don't you tell us how you got started in off-roading? Since you got quite the history with this.
I was, let's see. I wheeled in high school. A Jeep was not, it wasn't my first car, but I had a 73 CJ5 that was an absolute clapped out, rusty, termites holding hands,
wow.
CJ5, but it was mine. We didn't know what rust was in Arizona. This thing I guess it come from Nebraska, but I wheeled that thing, and that kind of got me hooked. And then in college, I was a journalism major, and I needed an internship program to complete my degree. And one thing led to another, and I ended up as an intern at Peterson Publishing for actually not 4-wheel and off-road, but 4x4 Power magazine, which was a new startup. It was a spinoff, and it was probably in print for 8-10 years. And so, I had died and gone to heaven. I was a college kid and was just an enthusiast. And then here I was, writing professional writing for a real magazine and stuff like that. And so that really set the hook, so to speak. And I've been doing it ever since. And it's kind of, I've always lived by that mantra that if you do what you love, the money will follow. And I've managed to do that, so I can't complain.
What was the first vehicle you took off road?
Probably that CJ5. There's been a bunch of them since then, but the 5 was the first real cool rig that like I said, it was a clapped up piece of garbage. it was a terrible car.
Wasn't like your mom's station wagon that you borrowed one evening to go to the store and then got it stuck on a mountain pass somewhere or anything like that?
No, I had actually, my first car, embarrassingly enough, was a 79 Volkswagen Rabbit diesel, and it was naturally aspirated, and that thing would not get out of its own way. It had like a 750-mile range, but it wouldn't even get out of its own way.
Yeah. I was gonna say it probably got good fuel economy.
That's about all it had going for it. It was, I called it the chick deflector. But
was it brown?
No, it was gray actually.
Okay.
I'm visualizing which side. No, mine was at least gray. But it was not yet. And I'm sure I took that one out, but I don't think I ever stuck it or anything like that. I stuck the Jeep a few times, and then I've stuck many vehicles since then.
So you've got 4 current Jeeps, and then you didn't say what the other 5 rigs are. I don't know if they're off-road rigs or not, but
they're not.
Okay.
So not all of them. The only other rig of note that is in the stable that is not a Jeep is my 64 Scout.
Very
cool. It is a 1964 Scout. It is on Ultimate Dana 60s and 38s. Has a 5-speed Tremec TR4050 in it with, of course, a Centerforce clutch. Magnum 205. It's just a little tank. So we chopped 3 inches out of the roof. It's pretty cool. It was the official Ultimate Adventure build for 2019. That's when we went to Alaska. Okay. So it's a cool rig, but it's a cool car. It's very iconic.
I saw that in the videos I watched for your manuals only Centerforce runs.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for, I think we did our 3rd year this year. So we started that, obviously, trucks and Jeeps and stuff like that is a big part of Centerforce's business. And overlanding is, obviously a big thing right now. Excuse me. And so we got started doing that, and I've led them. I've done the route planning and guiding for the last 3 years. And what we do is we start in a different part of Arizona, and then we spend 3 days overlanding, and then end up at the Centerforce HQ at the end. And it's been a really cool, very successful trip. This last year was epic. I got a super solid from Mother Nature. Where it was in March. And so we had just an amazing amount of snow melt, as I'm sure you guys did too, maybe a little bit later, but there was a lot of water, and normally dry creeks were running. And the best part was the last day we were I was on this road. It's a regular road, but it follows this creek bed. And it spends quite a bit of time in this creek bed. It's Castle Creek Road, I believe is what it's called. It's outside of Wickenburg. But there just happened to be, 6 to 8 inches of running water down this road. And so we spent 12 miles essentially in, 6 to 12 inches of water. And if you stopped, and it was running at a decent clip, if you stopped, you could actually feel the sand working out from under the tires and stuff like that, and working you down and everything. So that was neat. Cool. That was an epic trip. But Arizona is an amazing place, and like I said, I've done it for 3 years, but I haven't even scratched the surface. I could probably go another 7-8 years of starting in a different place, ending at Centerforce, which is located in Prescott, Arizona, which is kind of in the northern middle part of the state, and never hit the same place twice.
So now that I know you've got another off-road rig, this might make the question even more interesting. So what is your favorite rig to go hit the trail in?
Probably the one I'm in. I mean, as I kind of mentioned, that there are, I've gotten to the point where I have different Jeeps for different occasions, or different vehicles for different occasions. I have hardcore rigs. I have really mild rigs. At the end of the day, in my opinion, we're all after the leg shake. You climb some big gnarly obstacle, and at the top, especially with a stick anyway, you get that leg shake, and that's your adrenaline going and everything. And you can get that in the biggest, baddest crawler that's ever been built, and you can get it in a stone stock flat fender that when you take it places it doesn't belong. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously my personal heart is with Jeeps, but I've been really fortunate to have wheeled dozens and dozens and dozens of different vehicles over the years off-road, and I can't say there's a favorite other than maybe just being a little bit make loyal. That's about it.
Gotcha.
Well, with that in mind, I'm going to ask you what your most embarrassing moment was on the trail. That one that you think about at night sometimes, you get up. And then conversely, what was your biggest win? Your hero moment, or just, the most glorious moment, one that made you feel
boy. So I thought about the most embarrassing, and I came up with 3 last night, and I'll try and remember them all, and I'll try and be quick. But probably the most embarrassing is I had a 72 Blazer I bought it, believe it or not, those things are worth insane money these days. I had bought it for $800 and then proceeded to spend the next 10 years rubbing it up against rocks. I mean, I look at pictures of that thing when I bought it. I'm like, what was I thinking? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I was in, I believe in Alabama somewhere. And there was this trail, or you were kind of running down basically what you would picture a wash with a bunch of rocks on both sides of it, but it was pretty narrow. And the trail kind of went up and to the left, and it was real rocky. But it was pure rock. And so I managed to get, I made the left and I started going up, but I managed to basically fall off the line, and I ended up sideways in this trail, like dead sideways, dead perpendicular to the trail, with about 6 inches on either side between the front and the back bumper. And so it was a total Austin Powers, like 30 points, 30-point turn. And the thing was rough enough, I didn't really care about it. So I would just run the front bumper into a rock.
Yeah.
And then run the back bumper into a rock. And then, so it was like this crash, 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 trying to get straightened up again. And then so I finally got straightened up or whatever, and then I hit it again, and I did the same darn thing. It fell off the line, and I had to do it all over again. That's probably among the most embarrassing.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
That was embarrassing. There was the time I rolled my boss's Jeep. That was embarrassing. In the hot tubs in Moab, actually. I'd spent a lot of time four-wheeling at that point, but ironically enough, I had never rolled a car over. I had never rolled a vehicle over, and I managed to roll 2 in 24 hours.
Oh,
Two different cars within 24 hours of one another. I wasn't driving one of them. I was in one. I was a passenger in one with my good buddy Keith Bailey, and he was in his. It was a Poison Spider chassis. Nice rig, and we were on Double Whammy, which is a pretty iconic obstacle in Moab, and he just hit it wrong and hit it too hard, and we ended up upside down and sliding for about 50 feet on the roof of this thing. That one rattled me a little bit. I mean, it didn't hurt anything. I just flipped it over and kept going, and then excuse me, the next day I was screwing around with my boss's Jeep in the hot tub. And granted, the thing had been rolled before, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I got into the car wash, which is the big hot tub, and I hit it and went up and I did exactly what you're not supposed to do. which is tap the brakes, and it just went over, like about like a 3/4 in the back. So, but that was, if nothing else, kind of an embarrassing thing to explain to your boss. Sorry, I rolled your Jeep.
Yeah.
That was a good one. There was a third, but I can't think of it now. It'll come to me, I'm sure. Sorry about that.
So tell us about a big win that you've had on the trail then.
Ooh, a big win. There's a trail actually here locally. It's only about 30 miles or 30 minutes from the house. It's called Collateral Damage. There's an area in Phoenix called Table Mesa. It's just north of Phoenix. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, all the trails are named after Schwarzenegger movies. I don't know why. They just are.
Classy.
And yeah, classy. Yeah, there's Lower Terminator. There's Collateral Damage. There's a few others, but there's a nasty waterfall at the bottom of Collateral, right at the bottom of Collateral Damage. There's a big. It's a hard enough trail that they put a big man-made gatekeeper on it. So like there's a big K-rail that you have to climb over, because if you can't do that, then you have no business being past that. And so, but you climb down in this thing, and it's a big waterfall. And the whole trail is just a series of these gnarly waterfalls. And I got to the bottom of the first one, and it was just me and my buddy Vern. And I think he was in front. We ended up winching him up the first waterfall. And then I have a 97 TJ based rock crawling buggy, with just a 4-liter in it and stuff. And I managed to just get the line just right and have just the right amount of throttle and everything. And then, and just one-shotted it, like in one shot. I don't think I could do it again. I mean, it was just one of those like epic, this was dumb. I'm not even sure why I'm trying this, and managed to skate it in one shot. And then the other one just came to me, same car. Was it Tierra del Sol in San Diego, which is another really well-known off-road event, and hadn't been on the trail for 20 minutes. And I had, at the time I was hanging out, there were 3 active magazine editors. I had departed from the company or whatever. I was still a freelancer, but they were all my buddies. So we were hanging out. I hadn't been on the trail for 30 minutes, but there were 3 active magazine editors on this trail. And we were doing something where it was like the super steep, sketchy downhill, and it was super loose. Like when you started going, it was one of those, like, do you hit the brake and let the rocks and stuff like build up in front of the tires, or do you let it roll so you've got some steering control? It was some combination of that. And at one time, the car, I had my camera bag in the passenger seat. I remember distinctly it pitched, and that the buggy is incredibly stable, but the flip side of it is that it gives you almost no warning when it's past the point that it's going to roll. And so it's like it's incredibly stable to a point, and then the margin between it's going and not is about that wide. And all of a sudden it just did that. The weight shifted and it went up, and I was on one tire, and all the magazine editors are above me. I was on one tire, and all I could do, and my camera bag flew up from the passenger seat, hit the windshield above my head, and landed in my lap. And all I could think to do was pin it. And so, because it was headed downhill, and I pinned it and saved it. And like I said, it was a one-wheel deal for probably, it felt like a mile, but it was probably all of 10 feet. But, and none of those guys from the magazines, they were so amazed that none of them had a camera. So no pictures of it. Nothing.
It didn't happen.
Other than the guy.
It didn't happen. Nope.
Yeah. So
that was, man.
Yeah, because it would have been a yard sale. It would have been not just a one time. It would have been like a 3 or 4 time over, and really ugly. Probably destroyed the car. But I pinned it at the right second and saved it. That was cool.
I love those videos where you see that happen, where someone it's gone, it's over, and they hit the gas and something grabs and they hero out of it. Yeah, those are great videos.
Just think
yeah.
if they had grabbed a picture of that, it would probably been like a cover photo or something.
Yeah, or so, who knows? Who knows? But it just would have been nice to gotten a photo of it. So,
do you have any favorite places to wheel, or what is your absolute favorite place to wheel?
That is a really hard question to answer for me. I've been really fortunate that I've been wheeling all over the country, and I don't think there's one favorite place. They're all just different, and each of them have their benefits and drawbacks. Here in Arizona, we're the king of hardcore rocks. I mean, there's some really, really, really insane stuff out here. Same with Southern California and Johnson Valley and stuff like that. And that's kind of where my heart gravitates towards. But it kind of, as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm not into the, doing the biggest, baddest trail these days. I have just as much fun doing kind of the more of the overlandy style trips. Mine tend to be a little bit heavier on the wheeling than, the traditional overland trip, just because of my background. But that's what I love. But then you've got, so personally, but then you've got, the Southeast is absolutely amazing. There's no traction. It takes a completely different driving style, which you just have to adapt and learn. I mean, if there's one iconic, epic place that if I had to, again, you twist my arm behind my back, I'd probably say Moab, just because it's so beautiful and so diverse. And then maybe right behind that, the Rubicon, just because it's the Rubicon. I mean, the Rubicon is the Rubicon. It's the granddaddy of all the trails. It's not the hardest trail in the country by any means. Neither is Moab. But just for the beauty and the scenery and the history and all that stuff, it doesn't get a whole lot better for me.
So do you have any places that you want to go that you haven't got to yet? There's some place kind of bucket list-ish that you need to hit,
Not really. I'd like to spend some more time in Mexico exploring. Mexico, it's especially Baja. Baja is unbelievable. Just the people, the beauty, and it's just the Wild Wild West. I mean, you can do whatever you want pretty much down there within reason. No, I mean, I've been fortunate enough that, like I said, I've wheeled. Oh, I guess I would say anywhere in Europe. So while I've wheeled all over this enormous country of ours, I have not traveled internationally much at all, beyond the contiguous North America. So, I guess the short and sweet answer to that would be, is there anywhere, whatever? Yeah, sure. Whatever the next new place is.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Centerforce clutches. So
sure,
I put this question at the very, very, very beginning. I actually saw this happen in one of the videos on your YouTube channel, and it made me need to ask this question. So, how many times does the driver of a manual equipped vehicle have to jiggle the stick shift to confirm that it's in neutral before starting their vehicle? Is there a maximum or a minimum? I don't know, because we all do it. You're sitting in your rig, you jiggle it back and forth, and then you start it.
The only witty response I can come up with, and maybe it's a bit blue, but it shouldn't be terribly out of color, is if you shake it more than twice, you're playing with it. And I'll just leave it at that.
Oh,
yeah,
there are
a
whole bunch of
playing with them.
There's a whole bunch of things that, like, you almost can't, like, if I pick up a drill, I pull the trigger twice.
Oh.
I can't not do it. I cannot not do that. Anytime there's tongs for like the barbecue, or
you gotta chomp them, chomp.
Yeah, you gotta tick. And your hand knows how many times it has to be done to be satisfied.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's different for people, but it's weird how there's a bunch of stuff like that.
I got some lumber. I got some free lumber from work the other day, and after I tied it down, I twanged the strap, and as soon as I did, I was so angry at myself for doing that. Oh, it made me so mad. I don't have power over my own body. I can't help it.
Yeah, that's all right. Trent, why would someone want a manual transmission in their off-road vehicle?
I would say the primary reason would be control. So, as I said, I've wheeled manuals and automatics. I personally don't really have a preference. They each have their advantages, but ultimately, a manual transmission gives you more control. I mean, you select the gear and that's it, and it's in it, and it's not going to upshift, it's not going to downshift, it's not going to do anything weird. The nice thing about a manual as well is that it's a mechanical link between the engine and the axles. Short of the clutch exploding or something, you actually, and say the transmission completely comes apart, as long as you can get it in a gear, you can keep going. Whereas you poke a hole in an automatic and all the juice runs out and that's it. So I think that's a big advantage. I mean, automatics have their advantages too in off-road, but for me, I mean, it's not a coincidence that I want to make sure I'm right. Yeah, no, every single one of my off-road vehicles in my current stable is a manual. And like I said, I can do either one. So I just prefer it. It's just you got a little bit more control. And it takes and I think the thing that people find challenging with a manual, especially in off-road use, is that there's a bigger learning curve. And that's certainly true. I mean, yeah, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to, juggle 3 feet and all that stuff. And, especially if you're standing on end on a hill with the clutch in, and you got to figure out how to press the brake, release the clutch, and hit the gas all at the same time. That doesn't happen in an afternoon. You have to figure out how to do that and stuff. And so, but once you master that, it really has a lot of advantages. So I would say, I mean, manual or automatic, either one, but for me personally, I mean, manual would be really the way to go. And really the whole manual versus automatic thing, at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's like Chevy Ford. It's like the Chevy versus Ford argument. There's no wrong answer. There's no right answer either. It's just a matter of personal preference.
Gotcha. All right. So a lot of our listeners, maybe I shouldn't say a lot of our listeners, but we've got a few listeners that have tow rigs that they'll tow their rigs to and from the trailer or things like that.
Sure.
Is there some benefits to having a manual with a tow rig?
Absolutely. I think, and especially in a towing application, automatics can do weird things, while the programming has gotten much better and you've got more speeds and all that stuff. To me, I have a 2017 Ram that's an automatic, just because you can't get a manual anymore. But that one, even as good as it is, and it's pretty darn good, there are times it gets confused and it's annoying, and it's also very busy. It can be shifting a lot and everything, and that creates heat. So heat is really the biggest enemy of any environment, whether it's in an off-road situation or towing situation. But really, the two, in a lot of cases, in terms of like the ability to generate heat, are very similar. And so with a manual, having control, I told you to stay in this gear, and you're going to be in this gear until I get to the top of that hill, and that's the end of it. Whereas an automatic, that's not necessarily the case, or depending on the vehicle, sometimes you can lock them out, sometimes you can't. And there's some definite fuel economy advantages as well. There's some durability advantages in terms of heat and also just longevity. So, I mean, I would probably lean towards a manual for a true towing rig, especially if it's something heavy. or if you're towing something heavy regularly, I would definitely lean that way for sure.
Good to know.
Especially if it's a Dodge.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of yeah. Cummins is one of the best motors ever made. So period.
Their automatic transmissions in the 2000s were left a lot to be desired.
That is correct. That is, and alongside them was the NV 4500, which is a great transmission, not without its shortcomings as well, but generally speaking, is a much better transmission.
So, what are some tricks that you can do with a manual transmission that then you conversely can't do in an automatic? And I'm talking more off-road situation.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard one. Again, just the ability to lock out a gear, lock into a gear and go, whether it's up or down, or and there are situations where you want both. There's, you can sometimes get a good bump a lot better with a manual if you really know what you're doing. So a bump, like the Moab bump. So you're on it. You put your front tires on an obstacle, and then you got to pop the back up. If you do it right with a manual, it can be, very, very successful. The one place where I've seen where an automatic has an advantage, and it's only in a very specific circumstance, is if you're on, let's say like it's a long hill climb and you need a lot of wheel speed, like it's, greasy, nasty, having, unfortunately, and you need a lot of momentum to get going. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to shift in situations like that and keep the momentum going. It's nice for an automatic to just be able to pop and you're in the next gear and you can keep going. That's the one situation where I think the manual can be an automatic can be an advantage, but there's lots of other situations where I think a manual is really better. Again, control. I've had situations where I'm coming down something kind of sketchy, and for whatever the reason, the transmission decides to just upshift. You're using the compression braking, and then manual decides, you know what, second's good, and it's like whoa. That'll never happen with a manual. I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's where I'm at.
I once wheeled with a buddy, and I have an automatic, just to be clear, but he had a Nissan Xterra with a 6-speed manual on it. We were out on playing in the snow or something, and one of the advantages I saw when you kind of are like half stuck and you're trying to rock yourself back and forth, and and we were in snow. His manual did that so much better to pull, like it was insane. Like it's a clear. I suppose if you had a really bad transmission or something really old, there might, but he was able to get that thing rocking out of so many spots in that snow. It was ridiculous.
That's a great scenario that I hadn't thought of, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, especially depending on the shifter you have for an automatic, and that's hard on them too. Not only to create a lot of heat, but you're going back and forth, and so which detent am I in, and all of a sudden you hit neutral on accident or something like that. That can be a real pain in the butt.
Sorry about that, Travis.
Yeah, sorry about that, Travis. That's his name is Chewy, and he apologizes.
Yeah. So in your manual wheeler only events, I heard several people talking about a high inertia flywheel. I'm sure all of our listeners know what a flywheel is, so I don't need what that is. But what's the high inertia part all about?
So what that is, and it's something that we started, the companies did, I think, close to 20 years ago now. It started with the YJ, but what it is, we take a standard flywheel. Let's say a standard flywheel weighs, let's just say 25 pounds, just to make it easy. If you add another 6 pounds of inertia to that flywheel, if you add another 6 pounds to it, And especially if you do it on the outer ring, as close to center, the center of the crank, the more exaggerated that. So what it does is creates inertia. So imagine, taking like a 1/2-inch bolt and put it on the end of a string, and you start swinging it, and then just swing it with your hands, and then make that string longer. So instead of it being 6 inches long, it's now 1 foot long versus 2 feet long. You're going to feel that that the faster that bolt goes, the more inertia it's going to have. So it's Newton's law, the article that's in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by another force. It's the same principle. And so what the inertia wheel does in an off-road situation specifically is it just adds inertia to the engine and reduces the amount of stalling that you could get. It makes it easier, like pulling everything from pulling away, and even an on-road situation, like pulling away from a stoplight. If the gearing in your Jeep isn't 100%, let's say you put 35s or 37s on it and you haven't gotten around to re-gearing the axles yet, it can it increases the inertia to where whereas one time you had to step on the gas and kind of feather the clutch just a little bit, you can just let out the clutch and go, because the engine has an inertia. It can run at a lower RPM before it stalls. So that's the main advantage with an inertia wheel. And we have those for YJs, TJs, JKs, JLs, Toyota Tacomas, and we're looking at expanding them. But yeah, it's a very beneficial thing. Where I've noticed it, I put one in my CJ7, and it made a big difference. It really did.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
I didn't realize those came for so many more modern rigs. They've been big in like first gen Toyotas and Samurais and stuff for a long time because they have such tiny 4-cylinders. Like anytime you let the clutch out, it seems like they want to die, especially if you're on an incline. So
yeah, I had an old 22 RE, like a Toyota with a 22 RE in it. It needed all the help it could get. It was very anemic.
yeah. Reliability through lack of horsepower.
Exactly.
How can different flywheels and clutches affect the drivability of an off-road vehicle?
Another really good question. So clutches come with a variety of different friction materials. And like in the case of Centerforce, we have multiple different product lines of clutches that are almost like, mild to extreme, for lack of a better term. And so, at one end of the spectrum, you have like full-faced organic discs. Those are very OE oriented. They're going to look very similar to an OE clutch. They have a better product just because of more attention to detail, higher quality materials and things like that. But it's organic. And so it's going to behave very much like stock. It's going to feel that way. Then you get into like the dual frictions. Dual friction is a full face disc on one side. So it looks like a normal clutch disc on one side. And then you flip the thing over, and on the other side, the clutch material itself is segmented. And that does a couple of different things. It increases holding power it was difficult for me to wrap my head around it. And until I actually came to work for the company, and the best way that it explained it made sense to me, and maybe it will to somebody else. So you've got, these pucks that are, all around the disc. And then you've got a full face on the other side, which is just a full, it's full organic material. So you've got these pucks, and it seems like, well, wouldn't that reduce clamping force? Wouldn't that reduce holding capacity? And he said, well, the way it works is, imagine somebody standing on your chest with a pair of tennis shoes, and then imagine somebody standing on your chest with a pair of high heels. So with the high heels, it's a much more concentrated, like the pressure is concentrated at a much higher point on the flywheel. And so that is because it's more concentrated instead of more spread out. It actually contributes to more holding capacity, and so that same sort of principle is carried out as we get more and more extreme or more and more aggressive, I guess I should say, with the clutches. So you've got, the Centerforce 2, which is a great, and by the way, I should say for the off-road world, I will say a Centerforce 2 is absolutely the way to go for anything that is a wheeler. Unless you put a supercharger on it and are running just a ton of weight or whatever, the Centerforce 2 is really the way to go. The advantage to that is that it's a full face disc on both sides, whatever. Like I said, much higher quality materials than if you were to walk into O'Reilly or AutoZone and just grab a clutch off the shelf. Attention to detail and stuff like that. But until you get into like superchargers or something like that specific to off-road, the Centerforce 2 is really the way to go. If you're in that supercharger territory or you're hauling a bunch of weight or whatever, the dual friction might be a better choice. But for probably 99% of the people that are listening to this right now, just Centerforce 2. That's the way to go.
Okay. I'm glad that you're saying that. I've got a buddy I was talking to over the weekend. I'm like, hey, by the way, he's a big manual guy. I was like, by the way, I got Centerforce coming on the podcast on Monday. He was like, what? Oh man, I'm actually in the market for a new clutch for my Jeep. I'm like, well, you're gonna have to tune in. You're gonna have to tune in on Monday. So now I'll I know he's not gonna tune in, but I'll tell him to start shopping for a Centerforce 2 clutch.
Yeah,
I think he's got a JK. So
definitely the way to go. But just to kind of finish the thought, so as you move up, and it sounds like you guys are at least have a pinky toe in the Miata world, or I saw the Miata or whatever. It looked kind of racy. As you go up in power and performance and or responsiveness or whatever, you get into those paddle style clutches. So instead of it being a full face disc, it's like 6 paddles or 8 paddles, or just depending on the situation. Those are we have those. They're called our DFX line, and those are really pretty aggressive. Once you get beyond the dual friction, you're kind of getting into more. You got to make some compromises. Where between drivability and holding capacity and performance. A DFX is probably the last middle ground between like something that you'd street versus just a dedicated road car, or excuse me, a dedicated track car. So that's the DFX, and then you get into our twins, and the twins are really more about holding capacity. So now, most single disc clutches are good for, depending on the application, 500 to 650 foot-pounds of torque. Somewhere in there. When you get beyond that, you're really getting towards the ragged edge of what a single disc can handle. So we do twins, and twins are, if you guys aren't familiar, it's still a regular pressure plate, like what you would see on a normal clutch with fingers and all that stuff. But you also have, instead of a single disc, you have a pair of discs, and those in between them is a floater. And the floater is usually like a nodular iron piece that is basically what we're doing now is we're spreading the holding capacity amongst 2 discs. And so you're basically doubling the friction surface area, and that increases holding capacity. And so we have those for, like I said, those are really 650 plus is when you get into that. We have our SST line, which is a great entry-level twin disc clutch. Those are still pretty streetable. You could actually, like, if you've got a big bad Camaro with a blower and a cam and headers and all that stuff, you could still, you can street those with an SST. And then we have our top of the line, which is Dyad. The Dyad is a really premium twin disc system. Those can handle anywhere from 1,300 foot-pounds of torque. And then on the Dyad specifically, we actually have we can get into a separate friction material, which is cerametallic, get away from the organic material. And those are an on-off switch. Those are, racing power right now, or what have you. And so that's the basics on the clutch side of things. I should say that I should mention that, one of the things that sets Centerforce apart from the attention to detail, quality control, and all that stuff is we have our centrifugal weight system. That's the one thing that would always set a Centerforce clutch apart from any other clutch that you'll see. In addition to it being orange, there'll be those weights that are on the fingers. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, but there's these little weights that are on the clutch fingers themselves. And what'll happen is as RPM increases, those weights spread out on the clutch fingers and lift up on them and increase holding capacity. And it does it as a function of RPM. So the higher the RPM is, the more holding capacity you have. And we do that so that we can increase holding capacity without increasing pedal effort. So, I mean, I think you were all of the generation where we didn't have, we didn't really mess much with the old three-finger clutches, the old Borgenbeck style, that were just, it took a linebacker's left leg to get one of these. So if you had a really bad Mustang in the 70s, those cammed and headers and blah, 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 you needed this like a three-finger Borgenbeck style clutch. And those were, it took, your wife wasn't going to drive it. It really, it took quite a bit of pedal effort. So what Centerforce is built on.
I've never heard of that style of clutch before.
Yeah.
So are you talking about three fingers on the pressure plate?
Yeah. So instead of a whole bunch of fingers, it's just three, and it's typically three, maybe four in some instances. But those were, it took a lot of physical effort to actually release that clutch. And so what Centerforce was built on was the principle of increasing holding capacity, being able to hold those performance parameters without having to increase a whole bunch of pedal effort. And that's really what the company was built on. So there's stuff like that. There's some other things, some other patents that are in there. We have our ball bearing technology, which is basically, so the fingers that you see with a pressure plate, if you, and it doesn't matter whether it's Centerforce or any pressure plate, but there's a bunch of fingers right around the center, and that's what the throw bearing rides. So that's actually just a big spring. And so what that spring does is it rides on the iron ring, which is the friction plate or whatever disc on the pressure plate itself. That's what physically contacts the clutch disc. So that's what physically engages and clamps in place. So that spring, when you have the clutch in, it's a diaphragm and it releases, and then when you let go, it engages. And so, but that spring is on that pressure ring, and it's kind of hard to explain this without visuals, but it all rides on a fulcrum, and that fulcrum is in a factory configuration, just like these little iron ridges that are cast into the disc or into the pressure ring. And so what we do instead is we put those on ball bearings. We actually machine the surface on ball bearings, so that instead of that diaphragm just riding on these iron rings, they're on ball bearings. So it just reduces friction. We can actually, because we're putting that ball bearing on a finer point, we can actually move it around, and we can change the engagement point, or how quickly or gradually the clutch engages, depending on what we're after and stuff. And so there's a shocking amount of technology in clutches, and I really didn't even know that until I came to work with the company. But I had no idea just how much really goes into it. So it's pretty cool. But that's the company hat, but that's the long and the short of it. But there's a lot of different clutches out there. In the Jeep world, it's like I said, Centerforce 2 is really the way to go unless you're really doing power adders. Where you really get into a lot of mistakes in terms of clutch choice and stuff like that is really kind of in the pure performance car world. where the guy, there's a guy that, thinks he's got to have a twin when, really a single will do. And so that's why one of the things we do, all of our guys do when we get a phone call is, first question is, what are you doing with the car? What are you doing? What are you doing and what do you want it to do? And the recommendations all come based on that because, there's, I think, 7 different product lines within Centerforce. And so it can really, there's a lot of choices out there. And unfortunately, there's a few right ones and a few wrong ones. But then specific to the flywheels, which unfortunately I think was the original question, there's the inertia wheels, which I spoke about, which are really beneficial for off-road use. But then there's the flip side. So I think in your question, you actually said versus a desert runner. Well, a desert runner might want something completely different, and they might actually want something that's lighter, something that can rev quicker. And we see that a lot, and so we have actually a full line of aluminum flywheels to where it actually takes inertia away from what would be a factory application otherwise. And those are, like I said, it allows the motor to rev a lot faster. You can shift quicker and all that stuff. But the sacrifice is there's not a lot of inertia there. So you're much more prone to stall. You're much more prone to, that's why you see, if you're ever at a race and you watch a race car get loaded onto a trailer or whatever, they stall them a bunch. And that's why, they're after, they want something that's going to rev instantly. And that's the sacrifice. There's just no inertia in the engine.
I always say
that's what those Honda boys are after.
They always
Right.
you see the race teams pushing race cars not because they're afraid to start it, it's because they're going to pull it.
So one of the things, one of the notes with our double throwdown Dyad XDS, which is like the bad mamma jamma, 1,600 foot-pounds of holding capacity, on-off switch sort of things. One of the things we tell them specifically is, or ask them specifically, especially if there's, if it's worn out or whatever, is do you have a winch on your trailer or do you drive it on the trailer? And that's exactly why. That's one of the telltales.
So what are some extra dangers that off-roading poses for people who drive a stick shift?
Dangers? I would say the main thing would be just learning curve. Don't throw your wife in the driver's seat that's never driven a manual and then go hit hell's revenge. That's a terrible idea. Because they can get away from you.
Absolutely.
Because it's the physical link between the engine and the rest of the tires and stuff. So there's a bit more of a learning curve, but other than that, I mean, once mastered, just go have fun.
Just depends on how good your parking brake is, I guess.
What's that?
Yeah.
The only danger depends on how good your parking brake is.
I guess, yeah. If you have a parking brake.
Yeah. Seen a few roll, not over, but away from people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is they can get away from you really fast, and especially if it's a new driver. 90% of the time, it's just a new driver or somebody that's unfamiliar with a stick car.
That was that big accident on Black Bear Pass like 3 years ago where that Jeep rolled and rolled and rolled. Parking brake issue. What are some common mistakes that people might make if they're changing their clutch out themselves? A lot of DIY out there. I know Coy's probably changed a clutch or two. I've definitely changed several.
Sure. I would say not changing everything, and or so like the basics would be not resurfacing the flywheel, and having it professionally resurfaced. It's worth doing, or getting a new one or the other. That flywheel has to be flat, and if the clutch was chattering before and you put a new clutch in and that flywheel isn't flat, guess what? It's going to chatter again. And that's the fact of life. And then that extends to then the throwout bearing, the pilot bearing. Pilot, don't get me wrong, pilot bearings are a pain in the butt to change. They really are. But it's part of it. I mean, it's part of what you need to do to do it right. And and then the last thing I'll say, and this is specific to the JL especially, is follow the instructions. We have, and I can get into the JL stuff if you want, but JL, there's been a lot of factory issues that unfortunately, I'm not sure what Jeep was thinking when they developed that kit or with that system or whatever, but there are just a host of problems, and you can Google it. It's all over the place. I'm sure there's somebody listening that's probably dealing with it, but
I almost mentioned it earlier in the show when you talked about, I can't remember what you said, but it reminded me of the JLs and their exploding clutch issues.
Yeah, no, it's bad, but follow the instructions. I mean, we spend a lot of time and effort putting, if there's a pertinent note that goes with your clutch or your particular install, there's a reason we're putting it in there. I mean, and I think that's across the board. It's not just our products, but just aftermarket products in general. Oh, I've done a million clutches. I don't need these. Read the instructions until it gets. I won't read the instructions until it gets stuck, sort of a thing. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, there's some very specific to the JL. There's actually some very, very specific steps that you have to follow, and it doesn't matter if you've been turning wrenches for 30 years or it's the very first clutch install you've ever done. It's that pay attention. And that's the best of advice I could give you is that, and then don't, make sure that a lot of things we get, and this is not Jeep specific or JL specific or whatever, but just application wide, is that, if you're chasing a problem, make sure it's the clutch, because a lot of times, there's a lot of other stuff going on. There's the transmission, there's the synchros in the transmission, there's the clutch hydraulics and all that stuff. And a lot of those can be masked as a clutch problem. When the fact of the matter is, you might go through all the effort and energy of changing the clutch and you've still got the same problem. And it's because that wasn't the problem in the first place. So we get a fair amount of that, unfortunately.
There's almost nothing worse than going through a serious mechanical overtaking to fix a problem and then either realizing as you're putting it back together something, oh, this is what the problem was, or afterwards, then that's just it. Yeah. It always makes me, and it's usually something simple that would have been way easier if I had just known,
Yeah, well, and I mean, let's face it, a clutch is not fun. I mean, I mean, especially if you're on the ground and don't have a lift, that is not a pleasant process at all. So you want to do it once, just do it right.
Absolutely.
Do you see, or how do you see EVs and manual transmissions pairing in the future?
That was another question that I actually pinged our head engineer about, because I was like, I had kind of some of my own ideas, but I kind of wanted his take too. Unfortunately, with EVs, I'm not sure how that's going to work, because they're either axle specific, where the motor is just tied directly to the axle, or they're even wheel specific in some cases. And in an electric motor it's all the torque all the time from 0 RPM on up. And so there's really not necessarily a need for gear reduction, especially in a pedestrian, passenger car sort of application. And so I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of manuals with EVs. I've heard anecdotally that there might be one or two that has one, or maybe some version of a manual transmission. But with specific to EVs, I don't see there being much of a need, except for, like I said, specialized circumstances.
Do you see I'm thinking more like retrofits in the future. Like, I'm sure it'll be within my lifetime. If I have an FJ Cruiser, before I retire, everything's going to be pretty much electric the way it's looking. And there's got to be a lot of EV swaps going. swapping a EV motor and mating it to a manual transmission just seems like a lot less work and computer issues than trying to made it to an automatic, you know.
Sure. Well, packaging wise, for sure. I mean, especially a retrofit application, and I think at that point it'll just kind of remain to be seen. You know, I mean, obviously, in that specific application, you're going to have a 3, a 4, or 5, or a 6 speed that you're having to, if you want to retain that transmission, but you want to add the engine, there's gonna have to be some way to mechanically connect and disconnect that motor so that you can change gears. And so I can see that circumstance being the case, but in the case of like an OE application, I'm not sure how or if that would really apply, again, except in real specialized applications.
Last clutch question here. That was a mouthful. Is there a worry about the downward trend of people buying fewer and fewer manuals? I tried to do some research. I tried to find some like graphs and stuff. I only found one chart here. I'll put it up on the screen, and it says percentage of manual SUV sales and percentage of manual passenger car sales. And it goes from 2000 to 2020. And this, I'm reading this graph for our audio listeners here, and the SUV sales from 2000 start at like 43%, and they go down to probably 2%, and the cars go from 30% down to 5%, which is a huge bummer. As a vehicle enthusiast, I feel the most one with a vehicle when I'm shifting it myself.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, is it unfortunate and disturbing? Yes. I mean, especially if you're a clutch company. But that's not to say what's really not reflected in those numbers is kind of the increase of doing things like putting a modern transmission in a classic muscle car. So, you know, or you know, doing an LS swap in a 66 Nova or something like that, where it's a situation where they're either upgrading the transmission to a more modern, performance oriented. Let's face it, most of those were like 3 speeds. So you were lucky if you had a 4-speed. Certainly didn't have overdrive. So we're seeing a big increase in that genre specifically. So and that's not reflected in the modern numbers, because those are all new vehicle sales. It does seem like we lose a manual application or a manual platform about every year, and that's unfortunate. But they're just following the market. They're following the times, and but I can say that manuals are alive and well, and clutches are alive and well via some of these more performance oriented applications. I mean, any autocrosser, any of those guys are gonna want a manual transmission, and they're pushing them to the limits, and they're going to do something that's really beyond what a factory application can handle. And that's our bread and butter. That's where we step in. That's where we can make a real change, And then the other thing I'll say is, while that's the case here in the States, what's really remarkable is that's not necessarily the case in the rest of the world. I mean, I went on vacation. Good point. Well, I mean, to somewhat. I went to the Dominican Republic with my wife on vacation about a year ago, and I was shocked that virtually everything we got in, whether it was a taxi or a bus, I mean, a big bus all the way down, they were all manual transmissions. I mean, virtually all of them. And so, the numbers are a lot higher in Europe and in other parts of the world, for a lot of the longevity and durability and just ease of use sort of things. I mean, we just want to turn on our cars and go, and and listen to Sirius and on the way to work, and that's not what everybody does. So if anything, I think we're just a bit lazy.
I didn't think about that. It's been a while since I drove in Mexico in a rental car, but I had a whole lot of fun, and it was I think it was a Volkswagen Polo, which is the smallest Volkswagen that they had. and it was a blast ripping around Baja in a Volkswagen Polo. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Have you guys, this is kind of just out there, but have you seen any of these? So there's like Aaron just showed the graph of decline of American manual trans. There's like memes and stuff online where they'll like correlate that with like Sobe drink sales and be like, ever since people stopped drinking Sobeys, there's a bunch of stuff that self correlate. I just find it hilarious every time.
I have a good friend of mine that comes from a very academic family, and there was some website that was spurious. It was a statistics website, but it was spurious correlations. I think it was what it was called, but it was like it was things like average birth numbers in the United States to alligator deaths and stuff like that. I mean, it was just completely nonsensical or whatever. But the point being is that you can make statistics say whatever you want to say.
Yeah,
It's a pretty funny. I think it's like I said, spurious correlations. I think is what it's called. It's pretty funny.
I've seen quite a few from Daniel Transmits that are like that. Alligator deaths. Yeah, that they correlate. It's always, I find it hilarious.
I just pulled up that website, and the first one I looked at, it says number of people who drowned by falling in a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage appears in.
Exactly. Just completely nonsensical, but the graphs all match, so it's got to be right?
Yeah. I'm gonna have to spend some time on that website.
It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for introducing me to that, you guys. All right. Before we wrap up here, can you tell us a little bit, like, I'm sure people have heard about Ultimate Adventure. Can you tell us a little snippet of what Ultimate Adventure is?
Sure. So Ultimate Adventure started in 1999, and it was actually put on by Peterson's Four-Wheel and Off-Road magazine. And it was basically, you guys familiar with Drag Week?
Yeah.
Yes.
At all? Drag Week?
Absolutely.
It was actually, so it's a cross between Drag Link and Power Tour. And it was actually kind of invented by the same mind, same guy. And so what it is, it is
a night of off-roading.
Sort of, but on steroids. So it's a week-long magazine event, or it's a week-long event. It's invitation only. The event consists of invited readers, of which depending on the year, they're anywhere between 2 and 5. Sponsors, of course, and then cronies, which are a group of guys that basically just help herd the cats, essentially. We end up with anywhere between 20 and 25 rigs. This year is 28, which I'm really not happy about, but that's okay. But we'll do, in the course of 7 days, we will do anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 off-road miles. No trailers allowed. You got to be in your rig. Basically live out of your rig for a week. And then we hit as many hardcore trails as we can throughout the week. So that's the way it's been from the beginning. And to this year, I believe, is its 22nd year. It's the 23rd calendar year, but it's actually the 22nd event. There was not one in 2000. But anyway, so it's just a long time event. It used to have a ton of magazine coverage. There's still quite the following on YouTube. We put a 5-part video series out. Collectively each year they get about 1 million views. So I mean, it's not a competition. It's just an endurance event. And you just basically we're all there to just experience different parts of the country. We're always in a different place in the country. Never visited. We've only visited one place twice in 22 years, and that was the Rubicon. So if you're going to visit one place twice, we'll do that. That's going to be the one to visit, and that was 20 years apart. But I personally am fortunate enough to be one of 2 guys that's been on every single one of them. And then when there was some staff shifting that happened in 2017, and the guy that became in charge of UA asked me to do the route planning and guiding, and I did such a terrible job at it that I've been doing it ever since. So yeah.
Isn't that how that works?
Yeah. I need to mess up some more or something, because it's quite the time commitment. But it's very much a labor of love for me. I don't really have any financial incentive in it, or certainly anything like that. And it's just a great event that's put on, that's been going on for a really long time. And I'm sure there's some people that, have heard of it, that are listening now, or if not, can look it up. I mean, it's all over YouTube and fourwheeler.com and all that stuff. So yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
How do we score an invite for 2024?
So to first for 2024, yeah, because like I said, the 2023 event is in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I realized I missed this year's window. If it was a couple months out, I'd try to weasel in. But next year, you're loaded for this year. I'm looking at next year. I got to get time off requested,
Sure. Yeah. So there's been it's changed a little bit over the years. Used to be able to apply physically, like you would cut out a page of the magazine and fill that out and mail it in. That's no longer the case. Basically, right now, the best thing to do is to hit up Christian Hazel on Instagram, which is H-Bomb Industries, like hydrogen bomb, H-Bomb Industries, and he can give you the skinny. Obviously, entry for this year's event is closed, has been for quite some time. We typically, the event for the last few years has been happening in September, but we typically will open up applications like in March or April. And so, hit him up. He'll get you an application, and then from there, it is not a democratic process whatsoever. Not even a little bit. Basically, the people that apply are weeded down by various means via committee, which I may or may not be a part of, and then you get down to the Dirty Dozen. The Dirty Dozen are published on fourwheeler.com, so those are the final 12 finalists or whatever. And then again, but depending on the year, depending on the amount of room we have in the event, we'll do anywhere between 3 and 5 invited readers. Part of that process is those 12 all get a phone interview. So, in the phone interview, I've told people is really about, do you know what you're getting into? Do you know your rig and how to fix it? And can we put up with you for a week? So that's basically the gist of it. And then those 3 are chosen. And then every year, one of the readers that joins us that year is invited back for a second year. So if you want to go, if you're serious about wanting to go, I would say some of the tips that I have are build something interesting. If you're, unfortunately, if you're in a JL or a JK, it better be a really, really interesting JL or JK. Not the cookie cutter, LS swap on 40s or something, but something very different. And I say that's a cookie cutter because it really is. And so, build something interesting, build something weird, like a Scout or a Nissan Patrol or, something strange. And then, and just outside the norm, because at the end of the day, I mean, think about it this way. Do you want to see a video with 20 JLs and JKs in a line, or do you want to see like an F-250 with a flatbed on it, and then the next one is, a CJ7, and then the next one after that is, like I said, a Range Rover or something like that, but big and bad and cool and can bring it.
And that's diversity is always fun at that kind of stuff.
Exactly,
for sure.
Yeah, but definitely diversity gets you the front of the line. So if you're interested in going on UA and you have something different that's a little bit outside the norm, I'd encourage you to apply for sure.
And have you announced where you're going yet?
Top
Still
secret.
under wraps. It's also
It's
okay.
always a
secret.
secret. Yeah.
Top secret.
It's
So
like
the
a week
even
before or something.
no, even the UA participants know where the event starts and know where the event ends. They know nothing about what's in between. And and that's the way it's always been.
Oh, okay.
And so we do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's part of the fun. I mean, think about it. You're showing up, you have no idea where you're going. We tell you things like you need food for 2 camp nights. You need a minimum fuel range of 150 miles. I mean, we don't leave you completely in the dark. But you have no idea what states you're going to be visiting. You have no idea what you're going to be doing. You might be visiting a cool off-road park one day, and then a World War II museum the next. You don't know. I mean, we try and mix it up too, where it's not just about the wheeling, but it's about experiencing the different areas that you're going to be in. But we also keep the locations quiet, just because the event is well enough known that if word gets out in advance, we end up with a bunch of people there. And while very well meaning, it actually tends to clog things up and things like that.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, we tell the world where we were the day after we were there.
Yep. Right on. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Trent. It was good talking clutches. It really makes me want to get a manual transmission vehicle as a daily driver again. I love rolling the gears. Where can listeners find out more about Centerforce Clutches?
Sure. Best place is always our website, which is centerforce.com. We have a YouTube channel, which I believe is Centerforce Clutches. If you just search Centerforce, it'll come up. Same with Instagram and Facebook. We monitor all that stuff, or we're very active on the socials and stuff like that. And quite honestly, I see most of the questions that come in from the social platforms. So if you have any questions, by all means, reach out.
Awesome.
If it's anything beyond the basics, I really recommend just giving us a call for the reasons I've already stipulated. That there's the best product for the application really depends a lot on what you're doing and what your expectations are. And sometimes those aren't so cut and dry. So we always like to actually learn what they're doing and what they want to do. And we can make that. And sometimes, it's one of those things, I'm sure you guys run into it all the time too. It could take a book via text or Facebook Messenger, or you could have a 5-minute phone conversation.
Yeah, been there.
We're happy to do all of it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, a lot of times just give us a call. That's probably the best thing to do. If it's anything beyond the norm, if it's just like an application question or whatever, by all means, reach out to us via any of those methods whatsoever.
All right. Well, thank you. All right, guys. Next week, we're going to do an episode about unique trucks and SUVs. So be sure to tune in for that.
Yeah. And thanks everybody who listens to us weekly, and also those who watch us live on our socials like YouTube. Appreciate you guys. This is a long episode. We still have people hanging out watching. Thanks for sticking with us. Make sure you share us with your friends to help us grow, and God bless America. Don't forget to visit Patriot Patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. Check out our Gaia affiliate link for up to 40% off. Also, don't forget to head over to Warren, Colby Valve, and 4 Patriots to see all of their great products. We are a proud part of the Firearms Radio Network. If you've got any questions or comments, you can send it to us through our Linktree account or by searching for the Off-Road Podcast. Also, you can listen to us live at overlandradio.com at 7 p.m. Pacific. They just launched a new app for Android and iPhone, so you can listen to it through your cell phone through an app even. Make sure that when you're off-road that you have fun, tread lightly, are safe and courteous. Thank you for listening.